Good morning, artists. Happy Wednesday. It is sunny out right now. I know we're getting rain later, but we're just going to make it do, and it's actually kind of nice to have a little sunlight on us this morning. So, updates. Yesterday, we finished up doing our eyeball drawing, which is going to be due on Friday, along with the home study packet from before break. It was assigned before break, so I gave you guys an extra couple of weeks to get that wrapped up. So lots of stuff to turn in by Friday. Today is just fun art time with me. So we're going to work on some pieces. I want to finish up our little characters when we were doing our different planetary characters. And then we're going to start something new, a little project I've been thinking about doing for kind of adding some art in our neighborhood. And we'll talk about that if we get to it. I think we will. We only have a little bit left of our little characters here to work on today. So let's just get right to that. Let's just flip you right around. Ta-da! So, been working on these little planetary people for a while now. Little Mercury girl there and Venus right next to her. So we're going to keep working on her lovely outfit. Got my pens handy just in case, and got my set of colors all ready to go. Actually, won't need. Yeah. So, remember we were trying to base this off of what the actual planet coloring was, which you can't see the surface of Venus. It is much too crazy. It is covered with these beautiful, though, blue, gray, yellow clouds. So let's bring it down a little bit lower here so we can see her skirt. There we go. So starting off, sneaking into it, just lightly go in and start to add some color. I had to do some cleanup in the basement here yesterday after my older dog, Wesker, decided that rather than trying to walk around the puppy while he was sitting down kind of next to me, he decided he was just going to plow right through my curtain that I have put up to try and help keep this corner a little bit lighter so that it's easier for you guys to see what's happening down here, but also to just kind of hide the junk and stuff that goes on in the basement down here. But once he came through, didn't knock it all the way down until he tried to go back. And then again, he's like, I'm just going to go right through this curtain. And I finally got him, when I went to untangle him, his tail's just going like, yep, this is fine. This is totally what I meant to do. And then, of course, since it was a high-energy moment, Wiley, our puppy, decided that it was time to play. So he wanted to wrestle, which always leads to screaming in some way or another between the two of them. They are both upstairs now, hopefully being good boys. I was rather happy. Yesterday I spent a little bit of extra time getting done some of my homework. I'm currently taking college courses, as most of you already know, and working on getting another teaching certificate. So just so you guys kind of have an understanding of what all that can mean. A teacher, when they go to college, they have to get a certificate as a teacher, and depending on what they are going to be teaching, they have to take a certain number of classes in different content areas. So if you are a elementary teacher, you have to have a certain number of classes in pretty much every content. So math, science, English, social studies. If you are a secondary teacher, meaning you teach middle or high school, that means you specialize in certain classes. So you'd have to take some extra math or some extra science, just depending on which field you were going into. Now, if you are a specials teacher, meaning things like art, music, and PE, physical education, depending on the school you go to, usually they will have you get a degree that is not only for your content, art or music or PE, but you will also have to be able to do it from kindergarten through 12th grade. So it's technically similar to doing your education in secondary education. So like a middle school math or science teacher, you have to take teaching courses and also a lot of courses within your degree. But by the time you're done, you are allowed to teach pretty much in any grade level. So I have, it's called they call it an endorsement, meaning that you're allowed to teach. So I have an endorsement in K-12 art education. I have only ever taught in middle school though, and honestly, I hadn't intended on getting there. I hadn't planned that I would become a middle school teacher. I always kind of saw myself as doing elementary school. In fact, when I was going through the education program, here's the other part of learning to be a teacher. Not only do you have to go to school for it, but you will spend at least half a year, if not a full year, depending on which school you go to, going into another teacher's classroom, and you become a student teacher. So you work with the teacher there, and you teach classes. So when I was a student teacher, I did student teaching at an elementary school and at a high school. I think I started with the high school one first. And that was kind of interesting because, the high school kids are largely independent. And with the exception of like the freshmen, most of them were already familiar with the teacher and the room. So even though there were some things that we were teaching them, some skills, for the most part, a lot of our classes were introducing them to an idea for an assignment and then just kind of letting them go crazy with it. So I had done a charcoal project with them, and it was pretty much draw a picture of like a childhood fear in charcoal. Go. And they did. They went with it. And then teaching at the elementary was, of course, incredibly different because for elementary kids, you need to teach them everything. So we would have, sit down and go over instructions for the day and demonstrations, and then off we would go. And as somebody learning to become a teacher, there were a couple of times where I would be the one actually teaching the class. So my mentor teachers, the teachers who it was their classroom, they would just kind of hang out toward the back, make sure that, nothing crazy happened. Sometimes they could even, sneak off to go hit the bathroom or something like that. And I would be in charge. Watch your ears, I'm sharpening a pencil. And honestly, I'm sure any teacher, ask any of your teachers, they will all tell you the same thing. They learned the most important stuff about how to be a teacher during their internship. And even though it's really difficult, because you're teaching full time, you are the teacher. You are going to the school in the morning. You are preparing lessons. You are helping to grade all of that. And there's no time to do any other work. So it's a difficult couple of months or even a difficult year for a lot of people because, you could have like your job on the weekend or in the evenings, but, you were doing a lot. It was a ton of work. It was exhausting sometimes, as you'd have a full day of work and you'd be ready for the weekend to relax, and you're like, oh no, I actually have to go to work now and do my job so that I have money so that I can still live. You're working full time, but you're not getting paid. Which they wanted to get more teachers out there and wanted to get more people interested in becoming teachers. That would be a really smart thing to do, would be to find a way to pay the teachers for their internship. Let's get on that. We're going to need to. Not a lot of people going into teaching anymore. Need to get those butts in the classroom. But in any case, I had started off doing with the, I had the elementary and the high school that I went to for my internships. And then I had to go I spent a year, actually. I moved back with my parents because that was just how we kind of had to do things. We didn't have money to go out and buy a house yet. And I worked as a substitute teacher in a couple of different districts. Which it was pretty good money. It definitely gave you a good idea of what a substitute has to go through. Just walking in. I ended up trying to get to know all the art teachers in the different buildings I went to so they could request me when they needed a substitute. And those were the best, when I could actually be in an art room and work with the kids on art. More sharpening. Watch your ears. But then I ended up with my middle school job. And I like middle school. I honestly do. I did an interview when I decided it was time to find a new school before I ended up at Riverside with you guys. I interviewed at a elementary school. And I was trying to, come up with some elementary lessons and trying to think of what it was going to be like trying to be an elementary school teacher, and just thinking how different it was going to be and how strange it was going to be. Because I really enjoy, middle school level, because, you guys are just starting to really think for yourselves and learning how to be creative. You're able to look at artwork and appreciate what other people have done and think about getting some of your own ideas on how to do things. So even when I was thinking of moving elementary, in my heart I was kind of like, man, I don't know. I think I would miss my middle schoolers too much. So I was really happy to get a job at a middle school. But part of staying at this school now, because in our area we have so many students that English is not their first language, it became a requirement that new teachers would need to go back to school and take classes in order to become somebody who could teach English as a second language. So working with students who don't speak English fluently or don't speak English at home, and be able to modify their classrooms to be able to help students like that. And it's definitely been interesting so far. And this week is the last week of my current class. And I spent some time getting part of my homework done. I've got my final project is going to be due this weekend. So I'll be working on that throughout the rest of the week and probably be spending a lot of time on it this weekend, making sure it's 100%. Not to brag, but I have a really good grade in that class right now. I've got a 99.8%. I think part of it is because so many of the teachers that teach these classes, they're used to working with, either teachers that are going to be teaching second language classes, or they are teachers who have like a core class, and they're getting that endorsement, like me, to be a better service to the school. But I don't think that they have too many like art or music or gym teachers going through the program, because our classes, it can be very different from a traditional classroom. But I always try to do the very best I can. And I think that my teachers always appreciate that. That I am the art teacher trying to work as hard as some of the others. Should never underestimate effort. Teachers have gotten really good at spotting when a student is really trying hard versus just doing enough to pass. And the ones that really, really work at it, I think they get noticed. And I think the teachers tend to be a little bit easier on them. You kind of can't help it when you have somebody who's working so hard. I mean, that's part of the reason why I put effort grades in, is I want to make sure to encourage everyone to do their best, and that in doing your best, you can still do well. Sneak just a little bit of purple up in here before we go back and get our yellow for the highlights. Just little hints, not too much. Okay. You can probably hear that I'm putting a lot of pressure on this, so I'm not sharpening it too much. Just want to really smooth everything else out real nice. So there's a good chance I'm probably going to continue working on these characters, these planet characters. I really like them. And I would like to finish up the solar system. I may not do them on stream. We'll see. I do like to give you guys a little bit of a variety. of what I've been up to. So we're definitely going to show you guys once this is finished. Going to work on my secret neighborhood project, which I'll do again. I'll have some of that on stream and some of it not. Maybe I'll start picking days. So like today is Solar System Character Day, and this day, Thursday, is going to be Secret Neighborhood Project Day. My tape is getting a little worn, putting a lot of pressure on it. We'll see. I really like being able to see a project through to the end, but I feel like if I just spent the next couple of months just doing these little characters over and over and over again, it might get a little bit dull. I won't be able to comment on the art process nearly as much. I'll be like, all right, here we go again with colored pencils, and here's how you blend them for the 5th time. Like, you guys would already know all of that. Although, on the flip side, worked for Bob Ross. Every other painting was full of happy little trees, right? Now I've got to sharpen it. Look at that. That is all the way down to the end. Watch your ears. Now see, when you get a pencil that's getting this tiny, you can still just barely hold it, right? It's not too easy. If you roll it too far, it's going to start slipping on you. So this is getting to the point where either it'd have to get thrown away or start attaching. And you'll see I've got a bunch of these that I've attached together just to make them last as long as possible. But this one is even starting to get down to a very small point. Once it gets down to the point where the tape is practically going inside of the sharpener, is when we'll finally have to say rest in peace and bid it the little final nub a fond farewell. Or maybe I should save it and do one of those cool resin pieces you see flying all over the internet lately. You've seen some of those? People pouring colored resin onto like tree stumps to make it look like a river. So somebody who took like thousands of colored pencils, stacked them all together, and made like a cool rainbow sculpture out of all of these colored pencils. It's crazy. Most of them have a lot of tools that I do not have. Those spinning ones, the lathes, where they can use to carve cool things. Yeah, I don't have that. If you haven't seen any of them, though, you can go look them up. Any videos. Probably just look up like resin, R-E-S-I-N, R-E-S-I-N, sculpture. They pop up on my Facebook all the time. And it's one of those things you can't help but watch it. But then, of course, Facebook is like, oh, so you liked that, huh? And then they shove even more videos in your face about it. And you're like, no, it's really cool, but I can't do it. I'm just sitting here being jealous of all your cool art tools. All right, Brush her off. Beautiful. All right, so jewelry and finally hair. Let's scoot you back up a bit. There we go. But first, tea break. Today's flavor is lemon. All right, so I had mentioned this before because we talked about doing the fabric parts and the jewelry parts different. So having saying that, oh, we'll just make the fabric blue and then do yellow on the jewelry because then it'll look the most like gold. But we're gonna mix it up. Because then we said we could be contrary, which would be the yellow fabric and then blue jewelry like gemstones. But I don't want to do that. I'm gonna do all of it in different colors because that would be the most contrary. See? And then we'll go down to the next row and let's alternate how we're starting it. So now for the next part, let's do a test. Let's do a test first. Because here are my thoughts. I can either do the whole thing in this lighter blue and then use the purple and the darker blue that can create some cool different shades. Or go in with the white first and then do blue on every other one of those, but then that might match, that's going to match too much with the yellow. But maybe doing the blue and the white first. So it's a bit of a lighter blue. I kind of like that. I don't want it to be too dark. So going in with the white first. Across the whole thing, which of course is going to mean having to go back and go over those lines a little bit. Let's see if we can make it a little bit less. It'll take more time, but might have to do less pen work afterwards. That's better. All right. That's nice. I had a song in my head this morning. Woke up with it from a very, very, very old movie that I watched way back. Like, we're talking about the 80s here, ladies and gentlemen. one of my favorite characters growing up was a little girl dressed all in rainbows, named Rainbow Bright. Oh my goodness. She had all sorts of adventures of going to Earth, because she's like this, almost like a Peter Pan character, like this immortal child character. She would go to Earth, and she's the one who would bring in the rainbows after it stormed. And she was the character that would show up every spring and help chase away the snow. They even had a movie about how she went to Earth to try and end winter and couldn't, because a stuck-up space princess was stopping the light of the universe from getting out. Yes, it sounds crazy. It's a kids' movie, you guys. Accept it. It's a brilliant little movie. And she rode a white horse that had a rainbow mane named Starlight. It was fantastic. She had a puppy, a rainbow puppy. I think that only really got added, though, because they started, of course, they have to make the toys. That's how most cartoons in the 80s ended up happening. Funny enough, was that they would make cartoons to go alongside toy lines. And I think I heard this on some other awesome internet person was talking about how there used to be a rule about how TV shows couldn't sell product. And they got rid of that law at some point in the 80s. And that's when a bunch of toy companies started kind of encouraging and promoting different TV shows that would kind of support toy lines. So there were some that were, based off of previous media, things like Ninja Turtles. Those were based off of a comic series. Now, it was very different from the original comics. The comics were definitely a lot more hardcore, I would say. They were definitely a bit darker than the cartoon ended up being. But then you'd have shows like my favorites, He-Man and She-Ra. Oh my gosh, you guys have nothing better to do. You better go watch some She-Ra. They actually, I think it was on Netflix, just came out with, they kind of did a remake of the series, which is fantastic. They got a real popular comic artist, Noelle Stevenson, produced it, and she's a fantastic artist, you guys, like, for real. Her work can be kind of simple looking, but she's a great artist and she's a great storyteller, and she's definitely a big supporter of girl power, which is perfect for a She-Ra show because it's all about, a princess, but not your helpless Disney princess. No, she's a kick-butt princess. But originally, the show that came out was called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which was definitely, I'm sure you can tell, it was a very guy show. I still enjoyed it because it was pretty funny, but that was about a prince who gains kind of essentially superpowers, and he can transform from his normal everyday self into a superhero. and he like hides his identity. So it's a very Superman type story. But he can only use his powers through a magical sword. He has to have the sword in his hand in order to turn into his He-Man persona. And after He-Man did well, and they realized that, this was a good market for selling toys, they did a kind of mini-series event. I think it was 2 or 3 episodes of the show, where He-Man finds out that he actually had a twin sister who was kidnapped when they were babies and taken to another world. And he has to hunt her down and find her and give her her own magic sword. And what I loved, of course, being all about girl power myself, was She-Ra had more powers than He-Man did. He-Man was super strong and could do all sorts of things with that strength. And She-Ra had that as well, was also super strong. One could argue that she was as strong as He-Man. But her sword could transform into different things. She could turn it into lassos and shields and whatever kind of item she might need in the moment. She could also telepathically communicate with animals. And she also had healing abilities. And there was a funny moment where He-Man was like, "Oh, I can't do that." Once that miniseries ended, though, they wanted to see, how well did that do, and, introduced She-Ra toys and whatnot. And they sold well, so then they're like, let's just make her her own series. And they did. I had so many of those toys. I had She-Ra's castle. I had, every one of her horses, because all of the different horses also came with wings. They did this cool thing where they would give her, she would be in her outfit, but then you could, add her costume pieces on, so you could have her transform. It's fantastic. Even had one year, a friend of mine was coming to visit for the summer, and she and my sister and I were going to go to what ended up being a very small anime convention. And we wanted to do a costume group. We wanted to kind of dress up similar to each other. And we decided that we were going to pick out some of those old 80s girl cartoon characters. But my sister at the time was very into steampunk, which is how best to put it? There's been movies and book series and stuff are devoted to steampunk, which was an old idea during before electricity happened, and people were trying to imagine what the future would be like. They all had steam-powered stuff, so steam-powered trains, and so they started creating what they imagined the future would be like, but it was all using, their art style and the idea of using steam. So everything was, steam engines and lots of gears and top hats. So it was what people used to think the future was going to be like before electricity happened. Looking nice. So we took these characters from these old cartoons, and we changed their outfits into these kind of steampunk looking designs. So we added gears and ruffles and corsets and, you know, fancy hats. And it was a lot of fun. It was a fun year. I did She-Ra in this awesome warrior outfit. She has her magic sword, so of course I had to make a sword, and my sword had gears and stuff all over it. My sister went as Rainbow Bright, and she had this awesome Victorian coat and a tiny, adorable little top hat. And since Rainbow Bright rode a horse, instead of having, you know, a horse to carry around or anything, she made like this cool walking stick with a horse head on top, which was crazy fun to do. I helped her with it. We actually had to find a plastic horse, chop off the head of this plastic horse, attach it to a dowel rod, a big stick, paint everything so it looked like it was golden. Good times. Tea break. And my friend who came in from out of town did this other cute character called Strawberry Shortcake, who was a character that was, you know, lived in a food world, of course. Had a cute little strawberry top hat and everything. All right, hair. Here's the thing that I've been kind of playing around with this whole time, is trying to figure out what I want to do about this hair. Because on one hand, she's got a lot of lighter colors, so keeping with that, doing lighter hair would make sense. But I kind of like that she's got this Egyptian-y look, so my other half wants to do dark hair. And I don't know. I kind of feel like if I give her this kind of cool, poofy looking hairstyle, it should be darker. Let's try something, shall we? So, I would either go with the same kind of yellow we've been using, and she would be kind of a pale blonde, maybe sneak in little orange elements. On the other side, if I wanted to go dark, be using brown. Probably sneaking in probably a little bit of black. Maybe even creeping in a little bit of this indigo blue so that there's still a little bit of a match back to her color. I just don't know. I'm not ready to make that decision yet, so we're gonna sit on that for a bit. Sorry, guys. I'll show you once I finally decide. I'll probably just color it. It's the last part. But the rest of her came out pretty cool. Can we raise the camera up a bit? You can see her better. Yeah. She's pretty. Mercury looks so tiny and short next to her. Oh. You know what we didn't do? We didn't figure out where the fringe was going either. Okay. More things to figure out later. I want to take a little break from this. I want to show you guys the upcoming secret project. So, colored pencils out of the way. Colored pencils out of the way. So last year, while my family was up camping, we discovered this thing that the community would do, which would be to find different rocks and paint them. And not only that, then they would hide the rocks around the city, around, you know, in the different parks and whatnot. And then they would put, like, you know, that was up in, the city is called Boyne City. So then you could go on their Facebook. They put the name of their site on the back of their rocks. And you could go to the website and be like, hey, look at this. I found this rock. Somebody painted it. It looks really cool. So I found a bunch of cool rocks. Most of these were coming from walks. Finding, you know, pieces where the road had actually broken and left all these cool different shapes and whatnot. So I wanted to do make some little different creatures and kind of hide them around while I'm taking my walk. So we've got that. Got some paintbrushes and water standing by. Let's move my tea. I have, this is kind of a cool thing. This is kind of like it's like wax paper, but it's a palette. So you're supposed to be able to put your thumb through here. Scoot that up a little so you can see it better. You put your thumb through there, so that, or that hand rather, so you can put your paint on here, and then you'll be able to paint and stuff with it. And then when you're done, you just can peel that off and have it clean. So we're actually just going to put our rock right on top of it. Nope, you're creating a shadow. Stay over there. And got my whole thing of paint over on the side here. So I want to, starting off with this, I like making them look like little creatures, little animals and such. So let's grab, we're going to grab some white, we're going to need some black, and this is going to look like a little kind of dragony character. So let's get some greens and some blues, and let's even grab a yellow. So these are just cool little acrylic paints. My mom had actually found them in a whole package that she was the one who actually showed all this stuff to me. She found out about it and then went into a craft store and was like, I want to get some paint so we can paint rocks. Oh, this one hasn't been opened yet. Here's one that's been opened. There we go. Squeeze some right onto there. I don't know how far we'll get. We've only got a couple more minutes left of our stream, but I thought getting started would still be pretty cool. So I'll try to work with the shape of the rock and try to see if I can find, you know, different lines that will, or bumps that will work for creating different shapes. So like the eye would go there. Let's start with a beautiful, beautiful green. And I'm just going to get a little bit of blue. So just like when I'm working with colored pencil, I don't like leaving an area with just a single color. I like to mix and blend colors in together. Try to create some different layers. I'll talk some more about acrylic paint next time. It's probably my favorite paint to work with. I've worked with acrylic and tempera and watercolor and oil. Back when I was in school, I did work with oil paints. Those were tough, though. I mean, you have, just as a warning for you guys, if you're ever thinking of doing something like this, oil paint is very smelly, number one. You have to use, you have to have some kind of ventilation. You either have to have a window open, preferably being outside even, just because the fumes can be really bad for you. So super important if you're ever, like in an art store just looking for paint, unless you're familiar with them, you gotta be careful with oil paints. They also take an extremely long time to dry. Like in my classes, we would start an oil painting one day and you'd come back in the next day and parts of it would still be wet. And that was on purpose because the idea for those is that you can spend days working on a painting. So it was nice when you had like a really big canvas to work with, because then you didn't have to worry about having it dry, because if you wanted to mix colors, it was much easier. So there were definitely the good points of the oil paint, but it is definitely not a paint for beginners. If you want a paint that is a good paint, easy to clean up, because oil paint you can't clean up with water, you have to use chemicals to clean it up, and that too can be a problem, and you have to be careful with it. Alright, so now it's got this nice little dark blue-green. Cleaning off my brush. Okay, now we're going to get some of this lighter green. Just a little bit of the darker green with it. Because again, mixing colors. So now, what I'm doing is I'm making sure I don't got too much paint on the brush. I'm kind of tapping the brush off a little bit. And I'm going to go into an area that has already started to dry, because again, oil paints take a long time to dry, but acrylic, on the other hand, do not. And what I want to do is just very lightly start to go over the surface of the rock. And what that'll create is it creates these really cool light spaces and leaves other areas a lot darker. And you don't want to use, if you use too much paint, the paint will start to fill in all those little spaces. But by leaving it light like this, it really works with the texture of the rock. It'll make it look like, it kind of helps with this scale look that we're kind of going for with this dragon-like creature. I think turning rocks into dragons works best for me. Tried doing some other type things. You can paint like scenery and stuff on these, so we'll see. If it depends on the rocks that I find. But I really like the idea of doing these little creatures, and then when I go for walks, I'm going to like hide them in kind of more public areas. I don't want to put anything on somebody's lawn that's going to end up, accidentally lawn mowing over it or something. I'll leave it on like the corners on the sidewalk. So it's a little bit out of the way, but that, somebody might find it and just be like, "Oh, that's so cool." Maybe I'll put something on it just so that they know It's a little rock creature, and then I'll leave a little, use some chalk at my house and put a little sign, be like, yeah, little rock creatures. Contribute. Leave me your rocks. I will paint little rocks and hide them in the neighborhood for you. All right, so this is going to have to dry. We're pretty much running out of time today anyway. We'll do a few more of these Thursday and Friday so that we'll be able to kind of put them together and distribute them. And I will definitely take some pictures. And if you guys follow me on Facebook or Instagram, we'll be able to kind of see that journey a little bit. So probably what I'll end up having to do is I'll have to link my Instagram when I post this video on YouTube. And you guys can check it out there. If you want to just look me up, it's Artsy Shone, same as my streaming name. ARTSY Shone, SCHOEN. Come give me a follow. And I don't post stuff too much. I'm not like a crazy social media person. Let's turn you around here since we're talking now. There you are. Straighten that out. There we go. Yeah, I'm not a crazy social media person, so I don't post a whole ton of stuff on there. I don't check it as often as I probably could, but every now and then I'll do some cool kind of little art project or costume idea, and I'll post it on Instagram and be like, hey, check it out. I'm still doing stuff. So I'll probably start posting the finished rocks, but also then posting pictures of where I'm hiding them. And then we'll check in on them every now and then and see if people have squirreled them away for their own little rock collection or if they've left it for other people. And either way, it's fine. The idea is just to maybe make somebody smile a little bit as they're out and about. And I think we all need that right now. So maybe this will encourage some of you to do something similar, even if you can't paint your own little rock collection. Even just making little signs or posters to hide or leaving positive notes in someone's mailbox, things like that. Let me know if you think of something fun and artistic and creative to do that we might do in the neighborhood. Let me know, and maybe we'll see what we can do about it. But in the meantime, you guys got some assignments to work on. Get those done. Turn them in when you finish. And next week we'll be doing something really cool, okay? Oh, somebody popped in the chat. Oh, Nebulous, thank you. I appreciate that you're enjoying it. I'll see you guys tomorrow then, and stay safe, stay healthy, and wash your hands. Bye.